The recent congressional oversight proceedings showcased a rigorous defense of Director Kash Patel's strategic vision for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Representative Jasmine Crockett initiated a series of sharp inquiries aimed at questioning the operational leadership and professional background of the current director. She contended that Patel represents a departure from traditional leadership norms, suggesting his appointment lacks the historical depth typically seen in the Bureau's top office. Her arguments centered on the premise that political branding has eclipsed the urgent necessity of addressing domestic extremist threats across the nation. Specifically, she pointed to perceived lapses in federal resource management as evidence of an administration losing its core focus. The Congresswoman directed heavy scrutiny toward Patel's previous social media engagements during high-profile investigations into violent criminal activities. She argued these public statements were indicative of a temperament unsuited for the gravitas required by such a pivotal national security role. Throughout this intense dialogue, Crockett voiced significant apprehension regarding the protection of vulnerable demographic groups and the safety of elected officials. She framed the current leadership's trajectory as a potential deviation from the FBI's long-standing mission to uphold impartial justice. This line of questioning was presented as a dire warning about the integrity of the nation's premier law enforcement agency. In stark contrast, the committee chairman stepped forward to provide a robust and comprehensive defense of Director Patel's extensive career. The chairman meticulously detailed Patel's multifaceted history within the federal government, highlighting his critical contributions to various national security apparatuses. He emphasized that Patel's unique experience provides a necessary perspective for modernizing the Bureau's response to complex global and domestic challenges. By listing a series of high-level assignments, the chairman underscored that the director possesses a profound understanding of the legal and intelligence frameworks. This rebuttal served to validate the current administration's choice, framing Patel as a battle-tested patriot ready to reform the agency. The debate underscored a fundamental disagreement regarding the prioritization of investigative resources within the current geopolitical climate. While critics focused on the rhetoric of identity politics, supporters of the director emphasized the need for a balanced approach to all forms of radicalism. The chairman argued that the Bureau must move beyond partisan narratives to focus on objective threats to the American constitutional order. He maintained that Patel's leadership is defined by a commitment to transparency and the dismantling of entrenched bureaucratic biases. This perspective suggests that the director is actually strengthening the institution by returning it to its foundational principles of law and order. As the hearing progressed, the focus shifted toward the specific tactical decisions made by the FBI under the current strategic guidance. Supporters of the director noted that the reallocation of resources was a calculated move to enhance overall operational efficiency. They argued that the previous administration's focus had become too narrow, often ignoring emerging threats in favor of politically convenient targets. Patel's defenders characterized his social media presence not as a distraction, but as a modern tool for direct communication with the public. They asserted that this level of openness is essential for rebuilding trust between federal law enforcement and the American citizenry. The tension in the room reflected the broader national conversation regarding the role of intelligence agencies in a free society. Representative Crockett's concerns about marginalized communities were met with assurances that the Bureau remains dedicated to protecting all Americans. The chairman reiterated that under Patel's watch, the FBI is prioritizing the prosecution of violent crimes regardless of the perpetrator's background. He pointed out that the director's previous roles in the Department of Justice and the National Security Council provided him with unparalleled insight. This experience is seen by proponents as a vital asset in navigating the complexities of modern domestic terrorism and foreign interference. The discourse also touched upon the necessity of internal reforms to prevent the weaponization of federal agencies against political dissidents. Pro-Patel voices argued that his leadership is a necessary corrective to years of perceived overreach by unelected officials. They viewed the criticisms from the opposition as a defensive reaction to the director's efforts to increase accountability within the ranks. By emphasizing Patel's track record in the private and public sectors, his allies portrayed him as a pragmatic problem solver. They argued that his unconventional path to the leadership role is exactly what is needed to disrupt the status quo in Washington. Furthermore, the hearing served as a platform to discuss the evolving nature of threats facing members of Congress and other public figures. While the opposition highlighted specific instances of domestic tension, the majority emphasized the importance of a holistic security strategy. They argued that Patel's approach integrates intelligence from various sources to provide a more comprehensive safety net for all citizens. The chairman's defense focused on the director's ability to synthesize complex data into actionable law enforcement strategies. This capability, he argued, is a hallmark of an effective and forward-thinking leader in the current era of digital warfare. The narrative of the hearing remained deeply divided between those who fear change and those who believe it is long overdue. Critics like Crockett continue to view the director's actions through a lens of skepticism, fearing a shift in the Bureau's moral compass. Conversely, the director's supporters see a bold leader who is unafraid to challenge the institutional inertia that has plagued the FBI for decades. They believe that the focus on political image is a mischaracterization of a genuine effort to make the agency more responsive to the people. The chairman concluded his opening remarks by reaffirming his total confidence in Patel's ability to lead the Bureau through these turbulent times. Ultimately, the session highlighted the high stakes involved in the oversight of the nation's most powerful law enforcement body. The clash between Crockett's pointed accusations and the chairman's steadfast defense illustrated the polarized nature of modern American governance. However, for those supporting the director, the evidence of his qualifications far outweighs the partisan grievances aired during the testimony. They see a path forward that involves a more disciplined, accountable, and transparent Federal Bureau of Investigation. The ongoing debate ensures that the Bureau's mission will remain under intense scrutiny as it adapts to the requirements of the 21st century. The ongoing legislative scrutiny directed at Director Kash Patel serves as a prime example of the deep-seated resistance within the Washington establishment toward genuine institutional reform. Critics, led by Representative Crockett, have consistently sought to frame the director's bold policy shifts as a lack of fundamental experience rather than a strategic realignment. This narrative, however, ignores the reality that traditional experience in the Capitol often translates to an adherence to a failed and biased status quo. Supporters of the current administration argue that the director's outside perspective is exactly what is required to dismantle the partisan silos that have long hindered the Bureau's effectiveness. By challenging the entrenched bureaucracy, Patel is taking the necessary steps to restore the public's faith in federal law enforcement. The accusations regarding the misallocation of federal resources fail to account for the broader strategic necessity of securing the nation's borders and addressing rising urban crime. For too long, the FBI's focus has been diverted toward politically motivated investigations that targeted law-abiding citizens for their personal beliefs. Under Patel's leadership, there has been a concerted effort to pivot toward tangible threats that impact the safety and security of every American household. This shift represents a return to a common-sense approach to policing, where the severity of the crime dictates the level of federal intervention. The chairman noted during the hearing that this prioritization is not a failure of leadership, but a hallmark of a director who understands the pulse of the nation. Furthermore, the focus on the director's past social media activity is a transparent attempt to distract from his record of results in the field of national security. In the modern era, direct communication allows leaders to bypass the filters of a biased media landscape and speak directly to the American people. Those defending Patel argue that his transparency should be lauded rather than condemned by those who prefer the shadows of backroom dealings. The director's willingness to engage in public discourse demonstrates a level of accountability that has been sorely lacking in previous administrations. It is this very openness that threatens the power dynamics of those who have benefited from a lack of oversight. Regarding the concerns raised about threats to lawmakers and marginalized communities, the administration has been clear that violence has no place in the American political process. However, supporters point out that the Bureau must remain impartial and avoid being used as a tool for social engineering or political intimidation. The chairman emphasized that under the current leadership, every threat is evaluated based on its legal merit rather than the identity of those involved. This commitment to the equal application of the law is a cornerstone of the Republican vision for a fair and just society. By refusing to play favorites, Director Patel is upholding the most sacred principles of the United States Constitution. The narrative that the FBI's core mission is being eroded is fundamentally flawed when one considers the actual improvements in operational synergy. By streamlining the chain of command and demanding higher standards of conduct, the director is building a more resilient and responsive agency. His allies in Congress have highlighted several successful operations that were made possible through this more aggressive and focused management style. They argue that the warning being issued by the opposition is actually a sign that the reforms are working as intended. The resistance from the political left only confirms that the director is successfully challenging the old guard's grip on the federal law enforcement apparatus. The chairman's defense of Patel's extensive resume is rooted in a deep respect for the director's service across multiple branches of the government. From his time as a public defender to his critical roles in the intelligence community, Patel has demonstrated a unique ability to navigate complex legal landscapes. This diverse background provides him with a 360-degree view of the challenges facing the nation, from domestic radicalization to foreign espionage. His supporters argue that this is the most comprehensive type of experience a leader can possess in the 21st century. To label such a career as inexperienced is not only inaccurate but an insult to the dedicated professionals who serve in the national security sector. In the face of relentless questioning, the director has remained steadfast in his commitment to the American people and the rule of law. This resilience is seen by his proponents as a testament to his character and his fitness for the high office he holds. They believe that the American public is weary of the perpetual cycle of investigations and wants to see a bureau that is focused on catching criminals. Patel's vision for the FBI is one of professional excellence and political neutrality, regardless of the accusations thrown his way by partisans. The hearing serves to highlight the stark difference between those who want to use the bureau for political gain and those who want it to serve the public interest. As the debate continues, it becomes increasingly clear that the struggle over the FBI's future is a struggle for the heart of the American Republic. Supporters of the director see this as a pivotal moment to decide whether federal agencies will be accountable to the people or to a self-serving elite. The chairman's closing arguments in this segment of the hearing reaffirmed that the Republican majority will not stand by while a capable leader is maligned. They are committed to providing the oversight necessary to ensure that the Bureau remains a force for good in the world. This means supporting leaders like Patel who have the courage to make difficult decisions in the interest of national security. The focus on the political image of the director is often a code for his refusal to conform to the expectations of the Washington establishment. Patel's supporters argue that his primary responsibility is to the citizens of the United States, not to the approval of his political rivals. By maintaining a strong and independent voice, he is setting a standard for future leaders of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The chairman pointed out that the director's actions have consistently aligned with the priorities of the administration that appointed him, which is the essence of democratic accountability. This alignment is what allows for a cohesive and effective national strategy against those who would do the country harm. Ultimately, the goal of these oversight hearings should be to improve the functioning of the government, not to provide a platform for political grandstanding. While the opposition continues to search for ways to undermine the director, his supporters remain focused on the mission at hand. They believe that the evidence of Patel's competence is found in the increased efficiency and clarity of purpose within the FBI today. The American people deserve a law enforcement agency that is above reproach and dedicated to the principles of liberty and justice for all. With Director Patel at the helm, his proponents are confident that this vision is well within reach. The tactical maneuvers observed during the committee session reveal a broader ideological battle over the definition of national domestic priorities. Critics of the current director often lean on the rhetoric of alarmism to suggest that the focus on traditional law enforcement is a dereliction of duty. However, those standing with Director Patel argue that the Bureau's primary mandate must be the neutral enforcement of federal statutes. They contend that the previous emphasis on specific ideological groups was a manifestation of the very political branding that Representative Crockett now decries. By stripping away these partisan layers, the director is attempting to forge a more objective path for investigative excellence. This involves a rigorous reassessment of how the federal government identifies and mitigates actual threats to public safety. The chairman of the committee pointed out that the director's critics seem more interested in policing speech than in stopping violent crime. He argued that the scrutiny placed on Patel's social media usage is a coordinated effort to silence a leader who refuses to follow the establishment script. Supporters believe that a director who is willing to be outspoken is far more trustworthy than one who operates behind a veil of bureaucratic secrecy. This transparency is seen as a vital safeguard against the repeat of past abuses where federal power was used to monitor political opponents. The administration's supporters view the current leadership as a necessary disruptor of these long-standing and dangerous institutional habits. Therefore, the attacks on Patel's suitability are interpreted as a reaction to his success in exposing these internal flaws. When addressing the concerns regarding the safety of marginalized communities, proponents of the director emphasize a zero-tolerance policy for all forms of political violence. They argue that the most effective way to protect all citizens is to ensure that the law is applied without fear or favor to any group. The chairman noted that under Patel's leadership, the Bureau has expanded its efforts to combat human trafficking and drug cartels that devastate local neighborhoods. These are the issues that supporters believe represent the true core mission of a functional and effective federal Bureau of Investigation. By focusing on these high-impact areas, the director is providing tangible results for the American people regardless of their background. This results-oriented approach stands in sharp contrast to the symbolic gestures often demanded by the political opposition. Furthermore, the defense of Director Patel highlights the importance of having a leader who understands the mechanics of the deep state and its influence. His supporters in the House argue that his unconventional background is precisely what allows him to identify and eliminate waste within the agency. They view the reallocation of federal resources not as a mistake, but as a strategic necessity to combat the rise of transnational criminal organizations. The director's allies contend that the old way of doing business in Washington is no longer sufficient to meet the challenges of the modern era. They believe that the American taxpayer deserves a bureau that is lean, efficient, and focused on genuine national security concerns. This perspective frames Patel as a fiscal conservative who is also a staunch defender of the rule of law. The debate also touched on the integrity of the investigative process itself, particularly in the digital age where information moves at lightning speed. Supporters argue that the director's ability to communicate effectively in this environment is a significant asset to the agency's public relations. They dismiss the idea that his social media presence undermines the Bureau's gravity, suggesting instead that it humanizes an often remote institution. By engaging with the public, Patel is building a grassroots coalition of support for his reform efforts across the country. His defenders believe that this populist approach is what scares the entrenched political elite the most about his tenure. They see a leader who is more interested in the opinions of the American people than the approval of the mainstream media. The chairman's persistent defense of Patel's credentials serves to remind the public of the director's extensive history of high-stakes decision-making. Whether in the halls of the Department of Justice or the command centers of the National Security Council, Patel has proven his mettle. His supporters argue that this on-the-job training is far more valuable than the theoretical experience touted by his predecessors. They point to his successful track record in declassifying important information as a sign of his commitment to the public's right to know. This history of transparency is a key reason why many in the Republican Party view him as a transformational figure for the FBI. They believe he is the first director in a generation to truly prioritize the interests of the American citizen over the agency's reputation. The tension during the hearing reached a crescendo when the topic of domestic threats to lawmakers was introduced by the opposition. While acknowledging the seriousness of such threats, Patel's supporters cautioned against using law enforcement as a shield against political criticism. They argued that the FBI must be careful not to overreach into the realm of protected speech under the First Amendment. The director has consistently maintained that his office will investigate crimes, not opinions, a stance that has earned him praise from civil libertarians. This commitment to constitutional principles is seen as a hallmark of his leadership style and a rejection of the politicized justice of the past. By standing firm on these principles, the director is protecting the very foundations of the American democratic experiment. The narrative of the hearing also highlighted the deep-seated cultural divide between the coastal elite and the rest of the country. Supporters of the director see him as a representative of Main Street America, fighting against a corrupt and disconnected Washington bureaucracy. They believe that the criticisms leveled against him are rooted in a snobbery that looks down on anyone who challenges the status quo. This cultural resonance is a powerful tool for the director as he seeks to implement his vision for a reformed FBI. His allies in Congress are eager to help him push back against the cancel culture that they see driving the opposition's agenda. They view the hearing as a battleground for the future of the American character and the role of government in our lives. As the proceedings moved into more technical aspects of the Bureau's budget, the director's supporters remained focused on the bottom line. They argued that every dollar spent by the FBI should be directly linked to a clear and measurable security outcome for the public. This emphasis on accountability is a key part of the Republican oversight strategy under the current leadership of the House. They see Patel as a willing partner in this effort to bring fiscal discipline back to federal law enforcement agencies. By questioning every expenditure, the director is ensuring that the Bureau remains a good steward of the public's hard-earned money. This fiscal responsibility is framed as a moral obligation to the citizens who fund the government's activities. Ultimately, the goal of the pro-Patel faction is to ensure that the FBI remains a respected and nonpartisan force for justice in America. They believe that the path to achieving this goal lies in the bold reforms and strong leadership provided by the current director. While the opposition continues to focus on past grievances and hypothetical scenarios, the administration supporters are focused on the future. They see an opportunity to rebuild the Bureau into an agency that is truly accountable to the people and the Constitution. The chairman's closing remarks for this portion of the hearing emphasized that the fight for a better FBI is just beginning. With Director Patel at the helm, they believe the agency is finally heading in the right direction. The tactical arguments presented by the director's allies emphasize that true oversight requires a fundamental questioning of the agency's historical failures rather than a blind defense of its bureaucracy. During the proceedings, It became evident that the Republican majority views the director not as a threat to the Bureau's mission, but as its ultimate savior from institutional decay. Supporters argue that the previous leadership's obsession with domestic political narratives had left the country vulnerable to tangible foreign threats and organized criminal syndicates. By reorienting the FBI's focus, Patel is essentially conducting a rescue mission to bring the agency back to its original mandate of investigating federal crimes. This perspective counters Representative Crockett's claims by suggesting that the experience she values is precisely what led to the agency's current credibility crisis. The chairman noted that the American people are less concerned with the director's resume and more concerned with whether their streets are safe from violent offenders. A significant portion of the defense focused on the director's commitment to dismantling the dual system of justice that many Americans believe has taken root in Washington. Proponents argue that for too long, certain political figures were shielded from scrutiny while ordinary citizens were targeted for their dissent. Under Patel's watch, there is a clear directive to treat every investigation with the same level of legal rigor, regardless of the political fallout. This commitment to fairness is seen as a direct challenge to the establishment that has benefited from the weaponization of federal law enforcement. The director's supporters in Congress believe that his willingness to take on these entrenched interests is a sign of immense courage and professional integrity. They dismiss the opposition's focus on his social media as a desperate attempt to ignore the substantive reforms he is implementing. The discussion regarding federal resource management also highlighted the administration's focus on the opioid crisis and the porous nature of the southern border. Supporters argue that the FBI's involvement in these areas is crucial for national security, yet it was often neglected by previous directors in favor of high-profile political cases. By shifting personnel and funding to combat the flow of illegal narcotics, Patel is directly addressing a crisis that claims thousands of American lives every year. The chairman argued that this is the most pro-community action a director can take, as it targets the root causes of instability in many vulnerable areas. This approach reframes the director as a leader who prioritizes the survival of the American people over the optics of the Washington social circle. This shift in resources is not a misallocation, but a strategic realignment with the actual needs of the heartland. Furthermore, the defense of the director touched upon the necessity of transparency in the FISA warrant process to prevent future abuses of power. Supporters argue that Patel's intimate knowledge of how these systems were manipulated in the past makes him the ideal candidate to reform them. They believe that his oversight will ensure that the civil liberties of all Americans are protected from unwarranted government intrusion. This focus on constitutional rights is a central pillar of the Republican defense, positioning the director as a champion of the First and Fourth Amendments. The opposition's concerns about marginalized communities are met with the argument that the greatest threat to any community is a government that operates without accountability. By bringing these issues to the forefront, Patel is ensuring that the FBI serves as a shield for the people, not a sword for the powerful. The hearing also provided an opportunity for the director's supporters to highlight his record of identifying and removing bad actors within the federal government. They argue that a leader who is willing to clean house is often the target of internal leaks and coordinated media attacks. This narrative portrays the criticisms from the opposition as a reflection of the friction caused by necessary organizational change. The chairman emphasized that a stagnant organization is a dangerous one, and that Patel's disruptive leadership is exactly what the doctor ordered for a bloated bureaucracy. They believe that the American public understands that you cannot fix a broken system without making some enemies along the way. This outsider status is framed as a badge of honor and a testament to the director's independence from the political machine. Regarding the safety of lawmakers, the pro-Patel faction pointed out that the best way to deter violence is through consistent and swift prosecution of all criminal acts. They argued that the director's focus on traditional criminal law is the most effective way to ensure a safe environment for all public officials. However, they also cautioned against using the FBI to create a protected class of politicians who are immune from public criticism or protest. This balance between security and liberty is a key theme in the administration's approach to domestic law enforcement. Supporters believe that by maintaining a neutral stance, the Bureau can avoid becoming a player in the very political theater it is supposed to monitor. This philosophy is seen as a return to the professionalism that the opposition claims is currently lacking. The discourse also shifted to the importance of technological modernization within the Bureau to keep pace with cyber threats from hostile foreign powers. Supporters argue that Patel's background in national security gives him a unique understanding of the digital battlefield. They believe that his initiatives to upgrade the FBI's cyber capabilities are essential for protecting American infrastructure and intellectual property. The chairman noted that these investments are a far more productive use of taxpayer money than the witch hunts of the past. By focusing on these high-tech threats, the director is preparing the agency for the challenges of the future rather than fighting the battles of the past. This forward-looking approach is a key reason why he maintains such strong support among the committee's majority members. As the hearing continued, the contrast between the two visions for the FBI became even more pronounced. One side sees the agency as a tool for social and political management, while the other sees it as a strictly legal entity. Supporters of the director argue that his vision is the only one that is compatible with a free and open society. They believe that the attempts to delegitimize his leadership are actually attempts to prevent the public from seeing how much the agency had drifted from its core mission. The chairman's defense of Patel's character was a central part of this effort to reclaim the narrative. He portrayed the director as a man of deep conviction who is willing to sacrifice his personal reputation for the good of the country. The hearing also touched on the role of the FBI in international counterterrorism efforts and the importance of maintaining strong alliances. Supporters argue that Patel's experience on the National Security Council has provided him with the necessary relationships to lead in this arena. They believe that his America First approach to foreign intelligence ensures that the Bureau is focused on threats that directly impact American soil. This shift away from globalist entanglements is seen as a positive development by the director's allies in the House. They argue that the primary duty of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is to the citizens of the United States, not to international organizations. This clear sense of purpose is what proponents find most refreshing about the current leadership. Ultimately, the fourth segment of the hearing reinforced the idea that Director Patel is a transformative figure who is determined to leave the FBI better than he found it. His supporters are convinced that the reforms he has set in motion will lead to a more accountable and effective agency. They see the opposition's attacks as a sign that they are on the right side of history and the right side of the law. The chairman concluded this portion of the testimony by reminding his colleagues that the power of the FBI comes from the consent of the governed. He argued that under Director Patel, that consent is being rebuilt through a commitment to truth, justice, and the American way. This firm stance sets the stage for the final deliberations on the future of federal law enforcement leadership. The concluding phase of the oversight hearing underscored a definitive choice between maintaining a stagnant bureaucracy or embracing a new era of accountability. Supporters of Director Kash Patel argued that the relentless focus on his perceived lack of experience by Representative Crockett is merely a smokescreen for the opposition's fear of losing influence. They maintained that true leadership is defined by the courage to challenge failed paradigms and the wisdom to prioritize the safety of the American heartland over Washington's social approval. The chairman reiterated that Patel's tenure has already begun to strip away the partisan rot that has compromised the Bureau's reputation for years. By focusing on fundamental law enforcement duties, The director is rebuilding the foundation of trust that is essential for the agency's survival. This perspective views the current friction as a necessary byproduct of purging the political bias that had previously dictated federal investigative priorities. The debate over the director's social media presence was framed by his defenders as a revolutionary step toward executive transparency. They argued that in an age of centralized media control, a director who communicates directly with the citizenry is a safeguard for democracy. Rather than being a distraction, this openness provides a window into the decision-making process that was previously hidden behind layers of bureaucratic redaction. Supporters asserted that the public has a right to know the values and motivations of the person leading the nation's most powerful law enforcement body. This approach rejects the ivory tower mentality of previous administrations, replacing it with a populist commitment to being answerable to the people. The chairman noted that those who fear this level of transparency are usually those with something to hide from the American public. Regarding the protection of civil liberties, the pro-Patel faction emphasized that the director is the first in decades to take the threat of government overreach seriously. They pointed to his commitment to reforming the intelligence gathering processes that have historically targeted American dissidents and political activists. By ensuring that every federal warrant is backed by ironclad evidence, Patel is protecting the constitutional rights of every citizen, regardless of their political affiliation. His supporters argue that this is the highest form of community protection possible, as it guards against the rise of an unchecked police state. They view the opposition's concerns as ironic, given their historical support for agencies that often operated without sufficient legislative oversight. The director's vision is thus presented as a return to the rule of law in its purest and most constitutional form. Furthermore, the hearing highlighted the strategic necessity of the director's focus on the new threats of the 21st century, specifically cyber espionage and economic warfare. Supporters argued that the FBI must evolve beyond the 20th century models of policing that the opposition seems so desperate to preserve. Patel's background in national security is seen as the catalyst for this modernization, ensuring that America remains competitive and secure in a digital world. The chairman praised the director's efforts to collaborate with private sector leaders to protect American innovation from foreign theft and sabotage. This proactive stance is framed as a vital component of a broader America First strategy that places national prosperity at the center of the security agenda. By defending our economic interests, the Bureau is securing the future for the next generation of American workers. The discussion also revisited the administration's unwavering support for the Blue and the importance of morale within the rank and file of federal law enforcement. Supporters of the director argued that his leadership has provided a clear sense of mission for agents who are tired of being used as political pawns. By prioritizing the prosecution of violent criminals and drug traffickers, Patel has restored a sense of pride and purpose to the Bureau's field officers. The chairman pointed out that the recruitment of high-quality personnel has remained strong because the director values merit and results over identity politics. This meritocratic approach is seen as essential for maintaining the high standards of professional excellence that the American people expect. It is a rejection of the woke culture that critics believe has undermined the effectiveness of various government institutions. As the proceedings drew to a close, the focus returned to the individual integrity and resilience of Director Patel in the face of partisan hostility. His defenders characterized his performance during the hearing as a masterclass in composure and dedication to the truth. They argued that the vitriol directed at him is a testament to the fact that he is effectively dismantling the systems of power that have long exploited the federal government. To his supporters, Patel is not just a director, but a symbol of the broader movement to return power to the citizens of the United States. The chairman's final remarks served as a powerful endorsement, stating that the committee stands firmly behind the director's mission to reform and revitalize the FBI. They believe that history will judge this period as a turning point toward a more honest and effective federal government. The narrative of the hearing ended not with a resolution of differences, but with a clear articulation of two competing futures for the nation. One future involves an FBI that is a tool of the administrative state, and the other involves an agency that is a humble servant of the law. Supporters of the current leadership believe that only under Director Patel can the latter be achieved. They see the criticisms of Representative Crockett as the dying echoes of a political establishment that is losing its grip on the narrative. By staying the course, the director is ensuring that the FBI will once again be an institution that all Americans can respect and trust. The chairman concluded that the era of accountability-free governance is over, and a new day of transparency has begun. This transition, while difficult, is viewed as the only way to preserve the American Republic for years to come. Ultimately, the goal of this entire discourse was to demonstrate that the current leadership is both qualified and necessary for the challenges we face. The Republican defense was built on a foundation of facts, record of service, and a commitment to constitutional principles. They believe that the American people are astute enough to see through the political grandstanding and recognize the value of a leader who puts the country first. The support for Director Patel is not just about one man, but about the principles of justice, fairness, and national sovereignty that he represents. As the Bureau moves forward, it will do so with a renewed focus on its core mission and a clear mandate from the people's representatives. This oversight session, while contentious, has ultimately strengthened the case for a bold and reformed Federal Bureau of Investigation. The final takeaway from these deliberations is that the path toward institutional reform is often paved with resistance from those who benefit from the status quo. However, the administration's supporters remain undeterred in their quest to create a more perfect union through disciplined and principled leadership. They believe that the evidence presented in the hearing proves that the director is exactly where he needs to be. The American public can rest assured that their safety and their rights are being defended by a man of character and conviction. With the support of the congressional majority, Director Patel is poised to lead the FBI into a new chapter of service and integrity. This concludes the formal record of the oversight proceedings, marking a significant milestone in the ongoing effort to secure the American way of life. The legacy of this hearing will be defined by the courage of those who stood up for the truth in a climate of intense political pressure. Proponents of the director believe that his leadership will be remembered as the catalyst for a more transparent and accountable federal government. They are confident that the reforms initiated today will yield benefits for decades to come, ensuring that the FBI remains a beacon of justice in an uncertain world. The chairman thanked the director for his service and reaffirmed the committee's commitment to providing the resources necessary for his success. This unified front signals a strong and enduring partnership between the executive and legislative branches in the pursuit of national security. As the session adjourned, the sense of purpose among the director's supporters was palpable, marking a successful defense of a transformative American leader.